Oh, Johnny King, he was a one-off, wasn't he? You know, Johnny King is someone that you can tell stories till the cows come home about Johnny King. Obviously, being his captain at the club was an honour and a privilege to be captain of Tranmere Rovers, especially in them days, because we had a magnificent team. He seemed to bring the best out of every single player that he brought in. As far as I'm concerned, you know, he got the backbone of the team right. He brought myself in for a record fee of £60,000, which was in them days a lot of money. He was prepared to put his faith into me. He did, and I'd like to think I repaid that over the years. He brought Jimmy Harvey in. So it was me in goal, Jimmy Harvey centre mid, and Jim Steele up front. So we got his backbone right, and they used to call it the Christmas tree. And now we can bring the branches off that now. Once I've got that right, I can start bringing, and which is what he did, and which is exactly what happened. But, you know, I mean, he used to, at Valley Road where we used to train, he used to shout for Nico, the captain. I want to speak to him this morning. So it used to go in sort of right angles, and you'd hear shout with send for Nico, and then Ronnie Moore would send for Nico, then Kenny Jones, and you go into his office and he'd look at you and he'd sit back and he'd go, aye, the big fella. Say, what do you mean, aye? He said, if I was your size, he said, nobody could near me. He says, look at the size, you're Colossus. He says, Jesus Christ, he says, my captain. And he wouldn't say another word then for 2 minutes. He'd just look you up and down. And he'd say, do you know what? He said, do you know what? He says, I've just seen a bird land on the bow of the ship. And I said, what? He said, I've just seen a bird land on the bow of the ship. He said, he's got a twig in its mouth. You know what that means, don't you, Nico? I said, no. He said, we're near land. And this was midway through the season, last third. He says, I can see land, I can smell it. He said, I can smell it on the ocean. He says, I can see a bird with a twig on its mouth. He said, and you tell that lot you got down there. He says, tell them all to grab an oar. Because he used to love the Kirk Douglas films, the Spartacus and the Vikings and all that. And he used to dance around his office. And he says, I tell you what, he says, tell them to grab an oar. He says, and tell them to row like, he said, keep rowing until we get to the end. He says, and you've seen the film, haven't you? I said, what's film? He said, you've seen the film. And by the way, I watch it religious now. He said, you've seen the film, the Vikings. He said, when he's dancing along the oars, he said, if somebody pulls an oar, he said, bump, down we go, and that's the end of it. He says, so we want none of that nonsense. He said, you just tell them all to row in the right direction and we're going places, Nico. But he used to just make me laugh, some of the things he come up with.
Well, what did you think of him when you first met him? Because he was an eccentric character, wasn't he?
Yes, which is great. And people will tell you that's what I am. I've always been the sort of person who's a spade's a spade. I'll tell you the truth. I won't tell you any lies. You take me or you leave me. I'm Marmite, aren't I? You know yourself through the years. We've met, we spoke, as have other commentators. I think the older you get, the wiser you become, the more mellow you become. But I felt as though at times I had to stick up for myself at times in regards to the football world, because if you didn't stick up for yourself as a goalkeeper, nobody was going to stick up for you and nobody was going to support you, because you were one on your own and you are one on your own as a goalkeeper. And I keep telling these guys, I said it tonight to the young kids, you know, you've got to take control of every situation you're in, because if you don't, with all due respect, nobody cares. You've got to take control. But Johnny King, getting back to Johnny King, he had a special talent. He had a special talent of spotting special players that had been disregarded by clubs, if you like. Maybe they've got a big squad and they just didn't fit in that particular club. The likes of myself, who went on from strength to strength, the likes of Jimmy Harvey, who captained this club, went on from strength to the likes of Jim Steele, the likes of, Stevie Mungo, the Lion of Penton Park. He was an average player at Tranmere Rovers in the 4th division when the likes of Palios and the rest of them were all there, and there was 13 players and all that, in the 4th division. But, he brought the best out in that fella all through his career. Mark Mechanic, Dave Higgins followed him throughout, whichever clubs he went to. Dave Martindale, Mark Hughes, Steve Vickers, Ian Muir, Johnny Morrissey. All these players that you think about that seemed to step up a gear when he spoke to you, when he in his presence, because you wanted to do it for him and you wanted to do it for the Super White Army. And I think there's not one person in the cow sheds, in the stand, in the cops that would ever say that they didn't give what we didn't give 100% when Friday night football was Mardi Gras football, wasn't it? We'd turn up, would beat anybody that come. It was a fortress. Nobody would dare come. They didn't even want to come. They stopped coming on a Friday because they knew they were going to get their asses tanned. And then we were off to Rupert's. Not that you'd know about that. And have a few beers when you could. Enjoy your wins.